Welcome to the City Club of Eugene's March 10th, 2023 program, Anti-Semitism and How to Fight It. This is the 21st program of our 2022-2023 programming year. My name is Joel Corrin. I'm City Club past president and current program committee chair. The City Club of Eugene comes to you live today from the 5th Street Market District in the heart of downtown Eugene. Welcome to our fantastic panelists, Rabbi Meyer Goldstein, Rabbi Yitzchak, husband's handler, and Supervisory Special Agent Ryan Dwyer, as well as to our City Club members and everyone here with us in the room and listening today. It is our pleasure to welcome you to this community conversation. For almost 30 years, the City Club of Eugene has been delivering our mission to build community vision through open inquiry by coordinating weekly programs on topical and engaging community issues. The City Club of Eugene creates the space for civil discussions about civic issues. In doing so, we are among the most active and influential civic organization in the state. We invite you to join us every week to hear directly from local, national, and international experts on current local events and special community issues. We cannot do this work without the help of you. Support for City Club of Eugene is provided by our members, both business and in-kind sponsors. Our diamond sponsors are Kaiser Permanente, the University of Oregon, Peace Health, Lane Community College, and we appreciate the support of the City of Eugene and Lane County. Whether you're a first-time listener, or an old friend, we ask you to continue your support of City Club of Eugene at our website, cityclubofeugene.org. Now about the program. Nazis marching in Charlottesville, shouting, "Jews will not replace us." The slaughter at Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. Kanye West, Kylie Irving, making national news for anti-Semitic remarks. The Anti-Defamation League reports that in 1 week in 2022, the following incidents occurred. A vandalized cemetery in Waukegan, Illinois. An anti-Semitic graffiti including swastikas and the words "No Mercy for Jews" along the Bethesda trolley trail. Anti-Semitic flyers stating Kanye 2024, DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. And a Jewish school in Philadelphia received a bomb threat. Last week, there was call for a day of hate here in Oregon. Last week, there was arrest of a man planning to kill the Attorney General of Michigan because she is Jewish. And Eugene has a long history of anti-Semitic incidents. Recently, Steven Spielberg was on the Stephen Colbert Show. He said, "I find it very surprising. Anti-Semitism has always been there. It's either been there around the corner, slightly out of sight, but always lurking, or it has been more overt, like in Germany in the 30s. But not since Germany in the 30s have I witnessed anti-Semitism no longer lurking, but standing proud with hands on hips like Hitler and Mussolini, kind of daring us to defy it. I've never experienced this in my entire life, especially in this country." He said sometime in 2014, 2015, hate became a kind of membership to a club that has gotten more members than I ever thought was possible in America. And hate and anti-Semitism go hand in hand. You can't separate them. There have been efforts to fight back. The second gentleman, Doug Imhoff, is leading a crusade. There is a 2-day seminar at Lewis and Clark Law School at the end of this month called The Law versus Anti-Semitism. This is the second year they've had it, and they've got speakers from all over the country coming. The ADL is fighting. There's a group called Combat Anti-Semitism Movement. And even Arnold Schwarzenegger, in a speech last week at Stockton University in New Jersey, the son of a Nazi, called on people to change their attitudes. This program is personal to me. I was born in 1945, toward the end of World War II. My father, in 1948, got a job in Philadelphia for HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, working to relocate people who have been in the concentration camps and displaced by the war into Pennsylvania and South Jersey. I have seen people, like my butcher in New Jersey, with the tattooed numbers on their arm. For about 70 years, I told myself it could never happen here. Like many others, today I'm not so sure. Rabbi Meyer Goldstein, Rabbi Yitzchak Husbands Henkin, and Supervisory Special Agent Ryan Dwyer join us to discuss how we got to this point, the historical, cultural forces leading to today's anti-Semitism, and what can be done about it. Now, I made a choice. I could either correctly introduce the speakers and not have a program, or because their bios are so long and distinguished, we decided to have a program. Rabbi Meyer Goldstein is a senior Jewish educator at Oregon Hillel Foundation and a Judaic studies instructor at the University of Oregon. He has lectured on anti-Semitism to many organizations, including local and statewide offices of the FBI. Rabbi Yitzchak Husbands Henkin, lovingly referred to as Rabbi Yitz, is the Rabbi Emeritus at Temple Beth Israel in Eugene, past affiliate member of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association, a member of Rabbis for Human Rights North America, and an associate of Kalal National Jewish Center for Learning and Leadership, and a member of the Rabbinic Cabinet of J Street and the Oregon Board of Rabbis. Rabbi Yitz knows the evil of anti-Semitism more than most. He was scheduled to be at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh on the day of the massacre, but thank God he was late. Supervisory Special Agent Ryan Dwyer has been in the FBI for 21 years. He has led a wide range of criminal and terrorism investigations while stationed in California and Oregon. In 2015, he was promoted and served as public corruption/civil rights section at FBI headquarters. For the past 6 years, he had led the FBI resident agencies in Eugene and Medford, satellites of the Portland office. The first speaker today will be Rabbi Goldstein.
Thank you. Thank you very much to City Club for having us, for hosting us, talking about this unfortunately timely and critical issue. And thank you so much to Joel Sorkin personally for so much work he's done. Normally this is about a 2-hour lecture, so I'll try to do my best to say it in 12 minutes. No doubt many things will be left to the cutting floor, but so it goes. One last thank you all for being here. So many of y'all. Really appreciate y'all making the time. What is anti-Semitism? Let's start at the beginning. Well, before we understand what anti-Semitism is, we do have to take a moment to understand what is Judaism. What is Judaism? Judaism is an ethno-religion. Did he say an ethno-religion? Yes. Judaism is an ethno-religion. Well, what on earth is that? Well, it stands at the crossroads between an ethnicity and a religion. So that's how you can have some folks who are Jews, who are born Jews, but are not religiously Jewish. They can practice other religions. And you may have people who are not born Jews into the ethnicity of Judaism, but become Jews because it's a religion. So it's both and. And anti-Semitism will respond sometimes to one aspect, other times to another. So it's important to understand what Judaism is. Okay. In brief, we understand the beginnings of what Judaism is. So what is anti-Semitism? There are two parts to anti-Semitism. First part, anti-Semitism is the hatred of Jews because they are Jews. Hatred of Jews simply because they are Jews. And the second part of anti-Semitism is it is a conspiracy theory that blames Jewish power for being responsible for whatever is most hated or most feared. A conspiracy theory that blames Jewish power for being responsible for whatever is most hated or most feared. In fact, the very word anti-Semitism was coined in 1879 to substitute for an older word. It comes from Germany. The older word was Judenhass, or Jew hatred. It was coined so that it would sound more scientific and accurate, but Jew hatred's probably more accurate. Okay, so one question I often get asked is anti-Semitism the same as racism, just with a different target? And the answer, in a very rabbinic way, is yes and no. Yes and no. So yes, there are some similarities. Here's how it's similar. Here's how anti-Semitism is similar to racism. It is, as some say, punching down, which is the anti-Semite sees the Jew as less than he is, less valuable, less important, sometimes less human. Here's how it's different, called punching up, where Jewish power secretly controls whatever is most hateful or most feared in society. That's unique to anti-Semitism. It makes it dissimilar to racism. David Baddiel, who wrote a book called Jews Don't Count, explains how these two work together very well, so I'm just going to quote him. Jews are stereotyped by the racists the same way other minorities are, as lying, thieving, dirty, vile, and stinking, but also as moneyed, privileged, powerful, and secretly in control of the world. Jews are somehow both subhuman and humanity's secret master. That's why it's important to get both parts in there. So this next part, I'm laughing because I'm going to try and cover like a semester's worth of material in 3 minutes. So I'll speak really fast. I'm just kidding. So where's the history? Where does this come from? Where does Jew hatred come from? Where does anti-Semitism come from? Well, there are some medieval roots from medieval Christian anti-Semitism and medieval Muslim anti-Semitism, and there are pieces from the early modern period. So from the medieval roots hold that Jews are subhuman and demonic. Jews are responsible for deicide, for the murder specifically of Jesus, and not just Jews who lived in the time of Jesus in the 1st century, but all Jews for all time, which is holding the individuals Jews throughout history being responsible collectively for something else, for something Jews are seen as having done at some point. We'll see that again. Anyhow, so Jews being subhuman and demonic, deicide, the murder of a god, in this case Jesus, blood libel, which holds that Jews is a lie, that Jews feed off of human blood, use it for ritual purposes, or sometimes just for black magic. 4, the claim of dual loyalty, that you can never really trust Jews because they're actually secretly loyal to each other and not to whatever our collective society is. And 5, that Jews must be marked. They must wear what's called a Jew badge, a particular piece of clothing or something that will identify them. All that comes from the medieval period. Now, when we shifted out of the medieval period into the early modern period, we have emancipation. There's a great question of emancipation of the Jews. What should we do? We're building these new things called nation states, and now we will have new entities and relations of individuals called citizens, and they'll have rights, not just dependent on whatever the king or queen wants or has at his or her whim, but rather rights that will be recognized. And the question is, should Jews be allowed to be citizens of our new nation states? So the answers went back and forth, but what we saw bubble up in that period is this new form of political Jew hatred, political anti-Semitism bubbling up on the left and the right, where Jews were vilified for being rich and poor, powerful and powerless, and the list goes on. Two very clear examples throughout time. So we have Karl Marx wrote a pamphlet about Jews called The Final Solution, where he said, first, in order to get rid of capitalism, that's our ultimate goal, but first we have, as the world has to get rid of Judaism. Second, one coming from the other end of the political spectrum, Henry Ford, a great capitalist and a very famous Jew hater, published and translated old Russian anti-Jewish propaganda, famous, called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, translated it into English and freely distributed it throughout the United States. So, now that we've made our way all the way through the medieval and early modern period, how is anti-Semitism and Jew hatred showing up today? Well, one of the things to know is that presumptions about Jews and hatred of them and negative stereotypes are pervasive in society, which means that many individuals, both Jews and non-Jews, and many groups that we collectively join together, will adopt negative stereotypes about Jews and adopt some of the anti-Semitic tropes, blaming Jews for things that are disliked in society without even knowing it. But some clear examples from throughout the political spectrum that have shown up, one of which Joel referenced earlier in the Unite the Right rally from 2017, where you have various alt-right individuals marching around chanting, "The Jews will not replace us." Well, what are they really concerned about? This is very important, because when I first heard it, I thought they were worried that Jews would replace them. But that's not actually what they mean. It sounds like what they mean. But what they actually are referring to is something called the Great Replacement Theory, in which Jews, I know that feeling, in which Jews are held responsible for that which is most feared, which in this case is the so-called white genocide, or the importing of minorities who are looked down upon by folks on the alt-right and white supremacists to take their job and to ruin their culture. So it's not just that the racists who hate, let's say, brown and black people and immigrants, but that and Jews, who are also seen as being, on the one hand, race traitors, and on the other hand, really sneaky because they look like they're white, but they're not really. Excellent, thank you. Right, but here's what they mean, but that Jews also, in the punching up part, are the ones who are controlling and bringing all of these minorities here and destroying our culture. So they're both one of the bigoted groups that we as white supremacists look down upon, but also they're the ones that are secretly bringing people here and destroying our culture. So the Jews will not replace us. It's not that the Jews won't come and take our jobs, but the Jews won't organize and bring other people here. So how does this play out? Well, actually in the anti-Semitic terrorist act and the shootings of the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh, the terrorist who went in there and murdered people, Jews, while they were praying, was motivated by the Great Replacement theory. He cited it in his diatribe. Also, the terrorist who went in and murdered Muslims in the mosque in New Zealand also cited the Great Replacement theory. Also, the terrorist who murdered people of various minority backgrounds in a Walmart in El Paso also was motivated by the Great Replacement theory. This goes on and on. In fact, Eric Ward, who's really an expert in white supremacy, one of the leading researchers in it, and will speak at the conference at Lewis and Clark, which Joel referred to earlier, said the following. Eric Ward said the following: anti-Semitism is not at the core of white supremacy. It is the core of white supremacy. It is the only thing, it is the defining ideology across over 150 alt-right groups that unifies them. And one last piece to note here is something that is often referred to as ZOG, which is an abbreviation for Zionist Occupied Government, which we see on both ends of the radical spectrum, claiming once again the lie that Jews are secretly controlling our government, right? That we're afraid, the folks who believe in this are afraid that the government has what would you say, surreptitious desires to take away things that are important. And who's behind that? It's the Jews who are behind that. And then, okay, I'm getting many, many signals that I'm over time. Okay, friends, so I will stop there then. Thank you very much. I no doubt we will continue with the Q&A. It's a pleasure now to call on Rabbi Yetz, who's going to bring us home.
Thank you, Rabbi Meir. It was a wonderful presentation that I look forward to hearing fleshed out in its full semester pace. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you to the City Club for raising this issue to community awareness, to really let us have a conversation and a shared consciousness about the very real power of white supremacy, of anti-Semitism, of Jew hatred. I'll be sharing more personal experiences that I had as a rabbi at Temple Beth Israel, going back to the early 90s, when one night actually, some young people broke into Temple Beth Israel and stole a Torah. The Torah is our sacred scroll that we read from. And they hid it. With the help of police, we found it and returned it to its place in the ark, in our sanctuary. At that time, there was a question about whether this was an anti-Semitic act or it was just teen vandalism. They took other things as well. But I think that, I want to say that the primary perpetrator in that had both parents in prison at the time, and obviously was quite a disturbed young teenager. The sad thing about it is that several years later, he became one of the shooters at Temple Beth Israel when there was a drive-by shooting at TBI, and I'll show you a picture from the register guard. I'm sorry for those on the radio that can't see this, but it's a picture of sitting in the sanctuary, really with hearts broken that these people could hate us. It's always been confusing. Why? Why would anybody hate us? What is this about? That was a terrible trauma for the Jewish community. I remember that feeling of isolation, the feeling of vulnerability, that these people could have this high-powered rifle and with armor-piercing bullets shoot into our sanctuary. Thank God and thank people in our community, and I want to mention specifically Rabbi Dan Bryant. Yes, thank you, Rabbi, who did a wonderful job of rallying the community to come and stand with the Jewish community. And the standing with was incredible. Thousands of people came, civic leaders came and spoke. It was a candlelight vigil and followed by several nights of different congregations or organizations, civic organizations, coming and standing in solidarity with the Jewish community. I can't begin to tell you how healing that was, how remarkably comforting it was. The day before, I remember driving down the street and feeling very vulnerable and feeling like a target. And the day after that rally, I felt so good. I felt so cared for. I felt so integrated into the web of our community that it was, there was such a deep lesson in that. There's a deep lesson for the Jewish people. There's a deep lesson for the broader community about the importance of responding. I did have a chance, along with Reverend Dan, to meet, you like that, Rabbi? To meet with the young man who was involved in the shooting. We met with him and his parole officer, and in our conversation, it was very easy to discover from him that he was a committed racist. He had no interest in what we had to say and would just be going to prison. It was sad because I think, if I can speak for you as well, Dan, I think we both look for the good in people, and it was very difficult to see someone so cut off from an even an openness to discover some better part of his life. So that was a good reality check, that there are people who really have ideas that drive them and have difficulties in their own lives to such a depth that they look for some place to place their anger and the responsibility for their problems. They choose to place it on groups of people, Jews, blacks, gay people, the whole gamut of vulnerable communities, and refuse to take responsibility for their own problems. I think that's something we need to take note of as a society, that there are people with what I consider a mental illness that if it's addressed early enough, if there are the kinds of resources to intervene, some of those people could be kept from going down a path that's so destructive to society and to themselves. Years after that incident, I was conducting a Friday evening service at TBI, and we heard the sound of stones, rocks being thrown against the wall and the windows of the community during this Friday night service. It was shocking. People from the congregation actually ran out to see what was going on, to see if they could catch whoever was causing that terribly painful ruckus. And two brothers were involved in that, along with other people. And again, a family, those brothers were from a family that was very broken. One of their brothers had committed suicide, and obviously there was a lot of pain. The FBI, I believe, it was the FBI, contacted the synagogue and told us that one of these brothers wanted to apologize, and we entered into a restorative justice process that went over several months. I had invited a Holocaust survivor, an elderly woman who, at the age of 14, left Germany because of Nazism. I invited another woman whose parents were both in Auschwitz, and a colleague of mine, a rabbi, who was working with me at that time, and we entered into this restorative justice process to find out what was going on, and was this person really sincerely wanting to change course in life. I'm very sorry to say that while we went through that process and had hope and felt good about his letter that he wrote of apology to the congregation, but apparently the bond with his brother, his older brother, who was incarcerated for 11 years over this and other crimes, that bond was so deep that I believe that at this point he may have very well drifted back into white supremacy activities. It's not clear. There was an incident at eWeb. We were showing a film called Not in Our Town about the solidarity of the community in Missoula, Montana, when some Jewish people's home was assaulted with a brick being thrown through the window. And a group of neo-Nazis showed up to intimidate this gathering. There were probably 6 or 8 people. I, along with Eric Ward, went outside to where they were. And when I looked at them, I saw faces of lost, hurt, badly damaged people. And I always had thought if I saw somebody with Nazi regalia, I would want to jump on them and beat the heck out of them. I was younger then. Instead, I felt a loss, a deep loss of their humanity that they were carrying. And I asked them about that, if they really felt that they were different than I was in some fundamental way. They came into the room when we started to show the film, and their leader came walking around, and he said to me afterward that he could have clicked his fingers and mayhem would have broken out in the room. When he walked by me, I said, you know, you're using your leadership abilities in a wrong way. You could use those same abilities to do something productive. A few days later, I received a phone call from the police, and my time is up, but I'm going to finish this sentence in case anybody's interested. And this person told the police that he wanted to get out of the white supremacy movement. He was the education director for their organization. And we met, we went to lunch, we talked, he shared about his pain, his sorrow. He actually gave me the red boot straps that he had earned through violent actions. And he sincerely wanted to change, and he did. About a year after that, he came to the synagogue with his newborn baby to show me his baby. And I understand he's doing quite well now up in Alaska. And God willing, he will stay the course and do good. He actually spoke in high schools around here to warn young people about being recruited to white nationalism. I'm having to be quiet now. That's hard because I'm halfway down this little outline, but I'm going to be quiet. But thank you for listening. Solidarity is what I really want to say. That when we stand together, we're incredibly strong. When any one of the vulnerable groups in our community is attacked or there's an attempt to isolate, that's when we need to step up and stand in solidarity and give them a loss rather than a win. Thank you.
Rabbis, I think by definition, are eloquent. That's not specifically a requirement for FBI agents, but I'll do my best. Thank you very much. I absolutely appreciate the opportunity to be here. As a FBI agent, as a member of the Eugene community, as a father raising kids here, it's been heartbreaking to see the recent reports of anti-Semitic incidents here in our town, in our community, and nationally. And while I don't think there's ever a bad time for law enforcement and citizens to gather and discuss tough issues, this seems like a particularly timely conversation. So, as Joel mentioned earlier, I'm Ryan Dwyer. I supervise the FBI office here in Eugene and in Medford. I'm also the Civil Rights Program Coordinator for the FBI's Portland Field Office, which covers all of Oregon. I'm lucky enough to get based here in Eugene. The FBI's Civil Rights Program covers 3 types of crimes: hate crimes, which I think everybody is familiar with; color of law crimes, which are crimes that involve public officials that use their positions to abuse the civil rights of others; and FACE Act crimes, which is the freedom of access to clinic entrances, which is a 90s era law guaranteeing access to reproductive health care facilities. So those are the 3 prongs of the FBI's Civil Rights Program. In 2021, based on national trends, civil rights was elevated to the top criminal priority for the FBI. That comes with deep analysis. That's a very significant change in the FBI's approach and strategy. It also comes with additional resources for our teams and for our partners nationwide. And hate crimes continue to be our #1 focus within the Civil Rights Program. And that is, I think, as everybody knows here, they are uniquely impactful. Like, a hate crime attacks an entire community. It doesn't just affect those who are directly involved. It undermines a sense of security. It undermines our ability for our communities to do business and interact productively, and it undercuts our values as a nation and as Oregonians. So for that reason, civil rights is our #1 priority nationwide, criminally nationwide, and here in Oregon. So the FBI takes a nationwide approach to civil rights and a local approach. Nationwide, we collect information from the FBI hate crime statistics, which is probably a term folks have heard before, as well as intelligence and investigative reports from law enforcement agencies around the world to identify trends and threats. Share that information through training for law enforcement agencies around our country. Share it with community groups like the Anti-Defamation League, Secure Community Network, and others. We also, alongside our partners at the U.S. Department of Justice, provide investigative and prosecutive support to ensure effective and uniform enforcement of civil rights laws in our country here in all of our communities. And we do that alongside state and local law enforcement agencies. Agents that work for me here in Eugene are regularly out with Eugene police detectives and Springfield police detectives, Lane County Sheriff's Office detectives investigating potential hate crimes. And we couldn't succeed without that partnership. The Oregon Department of Justice has provided immense leadership over the last several years, creating a bias reporting hotline, streamlining the process to report bias incidents and bias crimes. We know hate crimes and bias crimes are massively underreported, and that's something we in law enforcement have to work hard to overcome. So the Oregon Department of Justice has provided some great resources. Some of our colleagues from Oregon DOJ are here today, and we can't say how much we appreciate their partnership in this. And they've made resources available by those, to those who are affected by these crimes and these incidents, and that's incredibly important. Victim support is an incredibly important part of what we in law enforcement need to do when we address hate incidents in particular. So with regards to anti-Semitism, we know from a number of statistical sources, members of the Jewish faith are targeted disproportionate to the population. In 2021, FBI hate crime statistics, and that's the most recent set of data available, indicated 16 people, or there were 16 hate crime incidents targeting people of the Jewish faith in Oregon. That's 16 times. Those are hate crimes, which mean, by FBI definition, it means there was violence or threat of violence involved or destruction to religious property. So that's 16 times Jewish people in our state were targeted with violence, or their places, their sanctuaries were targeted. Looking more broadly at hate incidents, Oregon Department of Justice records tell us 257 times in 2022 people were targeted with anti-Jewish bias, 30 of those times here in Lane County. So that's, that's just statistically remarkable. But we know statistics only tell part of the story. We also know uniquely Jewish people face threats from across the spectrum. As Rabbi Meir summarized much more eloquently than I could, whether it's an individual committing a spontaneous act of violence or it stems from a terrorist ideology, homegrown violent extremists motivated by jihadi movements online, foreign-based terrorist organizations, ISIS, Hezbollah, state-sponsored groups like the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and increasingly, over the last 5 years, domestic violent extremists, or what we call racially motivated violent extremists. All of these folks have anti-Semitism as the central tenet of their ideologies. And because of that, and the threats to our Jewish community is one of our #1 priorities in the FBI. And we know, unfortunately, people in the Jewish faith and other faith communities will continue to be targeted in the foreseeable future. We know it's the case. It's not going to change. All of us here in the room, along with law enforcement, have an important role to play in fighting back against that. Within the FBI, we've increased our training for our staff here in Oregon. We've increased training for our partners throughout the state. We've increased engagement efforts with congregation, because that is something we in law enforcement are working hard to get better at, to ensure that we are viewed as trusted partners that can be contacted and can have a conversation before, during, or after an incident. That's incredibly important to us. And I'll say, most importantly, there are resources available online specifically for protecting houses of worship and available through our office, knowing that communities have to balance security with being welcoming. But lastly, we can't emphasize enough, again, going back to the fact that we know bias incidents and hate crimes are underreported. We encourage everyone to report anything they feel is a crime. There's nothing too small to report to law enforcement. And I know you may not hear that all the time from law enforcement, but I think I echo the sentiments of my colleagues at Eugene PD, Springfield PD, and other groups. If you feel you've seen a crime or you feel like you've been threatened, please contact law enforcement. It's incredibly important for us in law enforcement to have the context of the challenges our communities, the groups we're serving, are facing, and to help make decisions on what might make your community the safest and the most secure it can be. And oftentimes, law enforcement isn't going to be able to make those decisions and help in that way unless we hear. So I'd encourage you, if you feel like you have knowledge about a crime, any type of bias incident, please contact FBI, contact the police, go to standagainsthate.oregon.gov, which is a phenomenal Oregon DOJ website with great great resources available. So please, I can't say enough how much I appreciate being here. I do think very strongly after 21 years in this job, we only succeed in law enforcement if we work with the community and we ensure this is a partnership to help keep our families safe. So definitely the FBI is committed to working with the Jewish community, other targeted groups, groups of color, LGBTQ community, to protect them and ensure they're able to live peacefully here in our community. So again, I can't say how much I appreciate the opportunity to speak with the group here, to get to share the stage with two incredible community leaders. It means the world to me. I look forward to the question and answer part. Again, thank you very much. And Joel is very clearly telling me I'm done. So I will be done. Thank you.
The ironies of life. For so many times I've been in a synagogue and I wanted the rabbi to stop talking and couldn't do it. And today I didn't want them to stop talking and had to do it. Thank you, Rabbi Meyer, Rabbi Yeats, and Ryan for joining us at City Club today. We'll begin our question and answer period in just a couple minutes. But first I'd like to thank our in-kind sponsors, our Sapphire sponsor, AARP, dedicated to empowering people age 50 plus and keeping Oregonians informed, engaged, and active. You can learn more at states.aarp.org/Oregon. Thank you today to our gold sponsors, Sacred Earth Botanicals, Ferguson and Fife Dentistry, our in-kind sponsors, KRVM, 91.9 Radio, PAC Info and Simplified Computing, LLC, Dotson Photography, and a special thanks to our award-winning public service radio station, KLCC-FM 89.7, for airing City Club programs on Mondays at 7 p.m. For those listening at home right now, your household is one of the several thousand tuning in to KLCC to hear City Club. We love that you are here. You can also find out about all City Club programs archived at KLCC, as well as on the City Club of Eugene YouTube channel and podcasts. We'll take a brief break, before returning for the last part, the question and answer period. If you have a question, stand in line by that microphone. Thank you very much, folks. Okay, we'll now start the question and answer period. Sir, you may proceed.
Yeah, my name is Garrett Epps. I'm a member of the club, and my question is particularly directed at Special Agent Dwyer. We're all very concerned about this after January 6th, but to what extent do we in Oregon have a problem with overlap or infiltration of local law enforcement, sheriff's departments, and police departments with these hate groups? To what extent is law enforcement itself compromised? And does the FBI have a program to try to deal with this?
Thank you.
No,
Good.
that's a great question. We're on here. Okay. No, thank you. That's a very good question. Obviously, it's been a remarkable period since January 6, 2021. I will say in Oregon, as we all know here, we're not immune to any of the problems that are seen across the country. We know that. I think we do benefit from strong accountability in a lot of our law enforcement agencies, while particular issues that may exist or ideologies that may exist that are inconsistent with a law enforcement agency's principles and values. Truthfully, there's not a specific role for the FBI in that. We don't investigate ideologies, we investigate activities. But I do think, speaking as a law enforcement officer here in Oregon, certainly the FBI has a very strong program to police our own, to ensure we are employing people who demonstrate the values that are needed to enforce the laws that we are charged to enforce in an unbiased way.
Rebecca Dinwiddie, City Club member. My question is, there are hate groups, but then there are regular folks, maybe who don't even think of themselves as anti-Semitic, who will casually mention international Jewish bankers. I have heard this, and what is the best way that we can respond without making someone who considers themselves a good person to not shut down?
That's for a rabbi.
Thank you. So the reason I was talking about anti-Semitism in terms of an idea and a conspiracy theory is that way we don't have to be in the realm of deciding who's a good person and who's a bad person, because we all have our struggles. We're all working on it. But for folks that don't want to be carrying anti-Semitic baggage, those are the folks that you can talk to and say, you can approach and say, well, do you know that this idea that Jews are secretly controlling the banks is actually it's built on some ancient ideas about Jews being nefarious, Jews being controlling, Jews being manipulative. And if you don't know that, then that's something that you might want to consider. So you raised the question in a really positive way, that you're talking about someone who's a good person, someone who wants to do good, someone who wants to improve, and not someone who's relishing in the fact that because those are the people that you can actually approach and talk to. So what I do is to talk about its roots. Where does it come from? Maybe it might be too heady. I would do it in a way that feels natural to you. You can also point out not only its roots, but its impact, its effect historically, that those tropes of Jews controlling banks or Jews controlling the government or Jews controlling nations have led people to commit horrendous acts against Jews and other people. So you can go one of either way.
Yitz, do you want to respond to that?
That's hard for me to respond to tell the truth, because it's one of those questions. It's a good question, but it brings up for me that whole sense of all of the stereotypes that a Jewish person can spend their life avoiding being stereotyped in any way, because there's so much trauma, intergenerational trauma, that is attached to stereotypes like that one, that I think you just need to ask them to do some serious looking at the facts. Also, the kind of the bizarre notion that Jews are so well organized about anything. All you have to do is look at a session of the Knesset in Israel, and you'll see the ultimate organization for the Jewish people is unbelievably chaotic right now. As a rabbi from a congregation, I can tell you, it wasn't easy.
The saying is that if you have two Jews, you have three opinions,
At least.
at least.
Why not?
My name is Venice Mason, and I represent a group called Our Cottage Grove, which stands for Organized, United, and Responsible. And I really wanted to remark to you that I'm sorry for those things that you experienced. And I'm asking a question about how do we engage better with our larger community up here, and how do we overcome our own stereotypes as people who are bigoted in thinking and a community that is just known redneck racist. We also chased the Lasky clan off of Main Street. We also have been organizing and working with people. So how do we overcome, and how do we receive the solidarity that you speak of receiving from our larger neighbors? And I'll give a brief example. When they did Nazi flag drops on our bridges during the eclipse, I called Temple Beth Israel. Who do we get here? How do we engage? How do we get boots on the ground to help us protect our communities? So how do we engage, and how do we overcome those stereotypes that kind of leave us lost at the bottom of Lane County?
And you have 2 minutes to answer.
Okay. May I start with this? First of all, I want to point out that you have pieces of paper on your tables. These, and some are over here if you don't have one. That one of these pages actually speaks to the question of how to respond, how to report bias crimes and stuff. So please take the time to take hold of these. You know, I think that it's wonderful that you reclaimed the space of Main Street in Cottage Grove. I'm sorry, I'm using this time with my silence, and if either of you have anything that you are urgent to say. Okay, so I have a view that we really need to be very proactive about this issue, this problem that has grown so immensely in our nation, that we can't be passive about it. We need to provide education about the Holocaust. We need to provide education about all of the biases and bigotries that exist and are waiting to take hold of the minds of people that are vulnerable. So that's one piece of it, is education. Another is serious resources for mental health. Another one is serious laws that govern appropriate availability of guns. And another is that as community members, we really have to stay in touch with our inner sense of solidarity with the others in this community, that we need to be ready to stand forward. When there's an anti-Semitic act, it's an anti-societal act. When there's an anti-African American act, it's against us all. When there's an anti-LGBT act, it's against us all. And we need to know how to stand up, to report, and to stand up together, because that really takes the power out, the wind out of the sails for those who want to be destructive.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So this has been our March 10th, 2023 conversation at the City Club of Eugene, featuring the program Anti-Semitism and How to Fight It. Before we thank our speakers one last time, I'd like to recognize our diamond sponsors. Kaiser Permanente exists to provide high-quality, affordable health care and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information at kp.org. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians to question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, and creatively and live ethically since 1876. Get more information at uoregon.edu. Peace Health has been proud to serve Eugene, Lane County, and beyond, your hometown healthcare partner, for more than 80 years. The Peace Health mission is to keep you and your family healthy. Learn more at peacehealth.org. And Lane County Community College, transforming the lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, highly educated educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. Thank you to the City of Eugene and Lane County for their support. Next week, Friday, March 17th at noon, Guilty Until Proven Innocent, the work of the Oregon Innocence Project. City Club will be here. We are all invited to come back. We invite you to become a City Club member, sponsor, or suggest a program at our website, cityclubofeugene.org. And thank you for helping us at City Club. Let's thank Rabbi Yitzchak, husband handler? Rabbi Yitz? Yeah, Hankin. Close enough. Rabbi Meyer and Ryan. Thank you for all. And Rabbi Dan.